Welcome to Late Night Story. When the world goes silent and shadows stretch longer, some stories awaken, whispered only to those still awake. So put on your headphones, turn down the lights, and let me guide you through the quiet hours. If you're listening alone, you're exactly where you need to be. If everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world, don't forget to subscribe before you drift too far into the dark.
Story 1. I'm performing an autopsy on a cadaver that was supposedly shot, but there's only an exit wound. His body lay there on the metal table. I looked at the hole on his back, near the right kidney, with my fingers interlaced, thinking a lot of people might rub their chin or lean on a counter. But I'd learned not to do that in med school. Just lace your fingers together. Nitrile glove on nitrile glove. It avoids a lot of contamination issues. All of us at the coroner's office have been putting in some serious overtime since the hurricane had hit the coast. The news said it was the worst ever recorded. Rain still poured down, and the streets were half flooded even if you weren't in the storm surge. Our facility was close to capacity, and we needed to get those bodies properly ID'd before sending them to a morgue. What I was dealing with here was something different. A day after the storm hit, this particular body was recovered from a street flooded with the surge. When we ran prints, he had an exceptional criminal record, and the fingerwood hole was assumed to be from a bullet. A plausible conclusion would be that he was looting. Things weren't adding up, though. What had been labeled an entry wound looked a lot more like an exit wound to me. It was larger, rougher, and didn't have any abrasion from the bullet entry. Details like that were unreliable on bodies that had been in the water for a while, but I saw no evidence of bacterial decomposition. It was also a bit strange that the man had clawed at the entry, but I suppose it was a reaction to the pain. There was a simple solution to this puzzle. If it was a gunshot wound with no exit, there would be a bullet. I turned him onto his back. Normally, someone would have helped me, but we were totally swamped. Rolling over a dead body weighing more than you do is hard work. But this wasn't my first rodeo. I started the Y incision to open up the chest and abdominal cavities. Really? You're doing that now. Flynn was about 14 hours into his shift. I couldn't blame him for wanting to get the easier bodies out of there and keeping the rest on ice so he could go home. I'm the doc. I call the shots. I'm working on this one, but I can do it alone. You just keep processing those others. Yeah. His voice was resigned, not resentful. Shoulders shrugged in his scrubs. I didn't need to see behind the surgical mask to know he was frowning. This was a tough week for all of us. Once I got the abdomen open, I started checking his left side. The first thing I noticed was that the kidney was missing. A lot of people only have one kidney. That wasn't what I was looking at. Both arteries and the ureter had been severed. Perhaps the bullet had passed through those, since there was notable tissue damage and internal bleeding. However, the condition of the connective tissues meant that he still had the kidney until very recently. And bullets don't make organs disappear. So what does make organs disappear? Perhaps it had moved around once it wasn't attached to anything. Stranger things had happened. The whole abdomen had to be examined anyway. So I just carried on, figuring I would find it at some point. I discovered a large hole in the liver. Removing the deep red organ carefully, I turned it over my hands. There was only one hole. If a bullet was in him, it would be there. It felt heavy. The cold, wet mass wanted to slip from my gloves. Normally, I would expect a liver this large to be fatty, but didn't look like it. Curious, I put on the scale. 2.4 kg. That was big. I went to write the weight down and to take a break. Normally, an assistant would do it. I took off my gloves to write notes on everything so far, massaging my stiff neck for a moment. When I checked the clock, it was 10:45 p.m. I'm grabbing a coffee. You want one? Yes, please. Actually, if it's not too much trouble, can you grab me a water too? Good idea. Flynn was right. I'd forgotten to drink any water or eat or do anything but work the last 5 hours or so. I poured a couple coffees and tucked 2 water bottles into my pockets. Making my way back down the fluorescent white hallway, I shouldered through heavy doors that pushed open from either side. They were convenient for moving bodies, or when you were carrying multiple beverages. "You doing all right?" I asked. "Doing just fine. Appreciate the drinks, document." He gave a nod. I downed the entire water bottle in one go, then drank about half of my coffee. I checked my phone for anything from my husband. "Text me when you're heading home. Love you." He was probably asleep already. Sleep sounded pretty good, but I had a kidney to find. I put on my lab coat, gloves, mask, and glasses. Seeing the liver, I froze in confusion. In the sterile white light, it looked deflated. This had been a long shift, but I wasn't imagining things. My note said 2.4 kg, but the scale now read 1.1 kg. Hurrying over, I stare at the green LED numbers as if they might change again. I was about to pick the liver back up when I noticed a wet, dark trail streaking from the metal plate of the scale onto the counter, then down to the tile floor. "Flynn, can you come look at this?" I tried to sound calm, but the rapidity with which Flynn came over suggested that I had not succeeded. "What am I looking at?" he asked. I weighed that liver at 2.4, wrote it down, got us coffees, and when I came back it weighed 1.1, and there's this trail going across the floor. So part of it fell? His conclusion was rational, but not correct. If it fell, why did it leave a trail that goes halfway across the room before fading out? Also, I feel compelled to mention that the body was in the water. "Oh," his voice was low and concerned. "This is bullet hole guy?" "Yep." We stood there looking at the gruesome trail, a smear which started dark and clear at the scale, but was untraceable about halfway across the room. "We gotta find it, don't we?" His eyes were visibly concerned, even behind the goggles. Of course he was right, but the question was not whether we had to find it, rather what it was. There was a growing certainty in my mind that it was not an inanimate object, but rather a living organism. I'm not a squeamish person. There's no need to go into details here, but I've seen a lot of things working as a coroner. There are a lot of insects associated with decomposing bodies. Sure, none of those insects are 1.3 kilograms. My best guess is as an eel. Check the floor. Everything could crawl under away from the walls. Slither under. Whatever eels do on land, it can't have gone far. We checked the small space under the cabinets, all around the room. I checked under the instrument table. Everywhere I could think of. I jumped when I heard metal clatter to the floor. Flynn cursed. My first instinct was that the creature had knocked something down, but Flynn had just bumped a tray accidentally. I could tell his nerves were thin, as were mine. "It's not here," he said. "Do you want me to check the next room?" I glanced at the doorway. The rubber sweeps on the base of the door looked secure. I doubted anything could have gotten through. Let's just slow down and think for a second. The whole search had been a panic reaction. When we had started, my intuition had been that whatever had come out of the man's liver would be laying on the floor somewhere. Since it wasn't, we would need a new strategy. "Blacklight," I said, behind his mask. Flynn nodded in agreement. Quickly go to a drawer and pulling out a blacklight shaped like a baton, with two long bulbs encased in a plastic frame. He flipped it on, carefully walking toward the scale. The trail glowed a sinister yellow-green. Initially, the dark smears were obvious even to naked eye, but where they at first seemed to disappear now lay a faint, glowing trail. Were those little marks along both sides? Do eels have like flippers? I think some of them do. Perhaps my voice indicated it. But looking at this strange track, I was becoming less confident we were searching for an eel. When the trail meandered across the floor toward a gurney, a nauseous feeling started in my stomach. As it went up the wheel, then coiled around the stainless steel leg, acid began to enter my throat. A closed body bag lay at the end of the blacklight's trail. We're turning the body over. Flynn didn't want to, but he nodded. We turned the black bag over on the stainless steel gurney, and I found what I was looking for. A finger-sized hole through the plastic. Oh, God! Flynn's hand went to cover his mouth in horror, but his reflexes stopped the rubber glove a few inches short. "All right, take it to the freezer. Fast, let's go." With no hesitation, we pushed the gurney, the body bag, the body, and whatever was inside it through the swinging doors, then turned down the hall. With one hand on the gurney, I reached out for the long, horizontal handle on the stainless steel doors of the insulated freezer room. I was in denial when I felt something sharp on my glove. It had to be the zipper on the bag, I told myself. As my head whipped around, Flynn screamed. A breathy, ha, noise escaped my lips. The front of it had some kind of teeth or mandibles, evenly spaced and radiating from what must have been its mouth. Behind that, small, sharp legs, perhaps an inch long, were going across the back of my glove. They must have been sharp, because they had easily cut through the nitrile and left small pinpricks of blood. The whole thing was jointed, armored, looked like bone. All of this I tell you from memory. Part of me wants to think that I misremember the thing on the back of my hand, but I know what I saw. It burned into my retinas like a photograph, even though I violently flung my hand the moment I saw it. Pointed legs dug into my skin, and the length of the monstrosity was pulled out from the body bag and flung across the hall as I shook my arm as hard as I could in panic. It left a wet mark where it hit the wall, then flopped to the ground. Before I knew it, the thing had scurried toward the exit doors, legs scratching at the base of them, then found a tiny gap right in the middle. As it forced its way under, I noticed with horror it must have been about 3 feet long. I ran back the way we had come, grabbing a fire extinguisher from the wall. I couldn't tell you whether I would have sprayed it or bludgeoned it, but I needed to stop it. If nothing else, I needed to know what it was. I needed it desperately. Flynn stood frozen in the hall as I kicked the exit doors open, stepping out into the parking lot in the downpour, searching puddles and current of water under dim yellow streetlights. A deep puddle had formed around an overflowed storm drain a little ways out, and I saw the water rippling back and forth as if the fish were swimming in it. That was the last I ever saw of it. That storm drain led right back to the ocean, from whence it came. After perhaps 30 seconds in the rain, I came back in, completely soaked and trailing water on the tile. Flynn just stared at me. "Sorry," he said. For some reason, I laughed. "Nothing to apologize for. You did everything right." "What was that?" "I have no idea. So it's just something that came up out of the ocean and eats dead bodies." Taking the glove off to look at the wounds on my hand, I shook my head. Gunshot wound was supposed to be cause of death, remember? His eyes went wide behind the goggles, and I couldn't help but remember the marks on the body where the man had clawed at his back. I wondered what would have happened to me if that thing had gotten to a softer part of me, rather than reaching my hand first. It took me a long time to accept that I would never know what it was. I talked to a couple of very good marine biologists over the next few weeks, who had never heard of anything like it. One of them took a bunch of samples from the first body and found some DNA. The best she could tell me was that it was from some organism distantly related to a polychaete worm, although no similar DNA had been documented. One of her only insights was that the creature most likely washed up because of the storm, which was the worst we've ever had. That was little comfort to me, because these once-in-a-lifetime storms are only getting more common. I asked her how I could find out what it was, what the next steps were. Her answer stuck with me. "We don't know half of what lives in the ocean, not even close. If it's something we've never seen before, I can't tell you how to find it. We'll probably never know what it was. I'm sorry." Story 2. The Death Parade. The Death Parade. The metropolis shimmered in the heat of late afternoon. Streets alive with murmurs and distant music from a parade. A boy clutched his grandfather's hand, peering down avenues that seemed to stretch endlessly. "Don't go," the old man said, voice low and wary. "The parade will take you, and you will not return the same." The boy nodded, but his curiosity tore at him. When the old man's back was turned, he slipped away, drawn to the glittering chaos that shimmered like a promise in the distance. At first, it seemed like a grand festival. The leader came skipping through the streets, tall and radiant, in a suit stitched with gold and silver threads. He waved and smiled, calling to anyone who would follow. The people did, as if his beauty alone were reason enough to abandon caution. Behind him, The drums began loud, irregular, and insistent. They pounded over the city, drowning out voices of reason, covering screams in their rhythm. The boy's heart raced. The noise was a thrill. Soon, the clowns appeared, one in red, one in blue with red noses and grinning maliciously ear to ear. They bickered and smacked one another with mallets, tossing pies in spectacular arcs. The crowd roared, choosing sides, laughing at the flayed, forgetting that the streets beneath their feet were trembling with a unspoken threat. Above them, ropes stretched endlessly into the sky. Rope swingers twirled and leapt impossibly graceful, shining with luck and skill. Beside them, hanged men swung silently, lifeless and cold, their faces a mirror of those who had tried and failed. The boy's eyes widened. One was enough to shock him awake. 10 would have terrified him, but hundreds swayed above him in mute warning. And then the giants came. Inflatables, elephant, donkey, bull, bear, and a golden dragon. They loomed over the crowd, immense and silent, carrying power and mass. The city seemed microscopic beneath them, insignificant. The crowd cheered, craning their necks, laughing, clapping. Few noticed the danger in their size, the shadows they cast on the buildings or the trembling windows. On stages moving through the streets, dancers spun, their bodies illuminated and hypnotic, ever in motion. Their rhythm pulled at hearts and eyes alike. The boys stepped closer, drawn toward the spectacle, away from the warnings that lingered in memory. Candy falls from above. Children scrambled, claws and fists meeting for the smallest, sweetest morsels. Some of the children taken, whisked into the stage by faceless men, and vanished into rooms that smelled of metal and fear, never to be seen again. Above it all, the mayor of the Grat metropolis sat in a purple chair, a grotesque monument himself. His blue suit strained across his girth, a red tie stained and smeared with spills, a button screaming vote over his heart. He waved and chewed and gorged, stuffing more slop into his mouth as he drooling down at the people, as if the city itself was his meal. The mob appeared, eyes glowing yellow. They ran through the streets, hurling fire and glass, smashing whatever dared to stand in their path. People screamed, but the drums, the dancers, the rope swingers, the leader, they all made it part of the fun. Slowly, a terrible change came. Faces in the crowd twisted, eyes flared yellow. Hands once innocent became claws. People joined the rabid mob, racing and jumping, screaming and tearing. The inferno leaping higher. Glass shattered against buildings, against bodies. The cameraman ran, filming everything. But even he was swallowed, leaving only screams and flickering light behind. The inflatables began to fail. The bear slumped first, hissing and collapsing, crushing streets beneath it. The bull followed, a groaning leviathan. Then the donkey and elephant sagged, their forms deflating with pitiful finality. The city trembled and broke. Only the dragon remained. It rose above the ruins, surveying the devastation. It grew larger, heavier, floating impossibly, untouchable. Below, the metropolis burned. Streets melted, towers toppled. The boy and all he followed devoured in flame. In the clouds, the dragon watched, immense and eternal. Its gaze glowed brighter than the fires it overlooked. The only witness of the ruins of Metropolis that had danced willingly into its own destruction. Story 3. Everyone in my hometown goes missing, and they come back different. You know how it feels when you just know something is wrong? Like when you walk into a gas station no one seems to be at, and it just feels odd. That's how they all seemed at first, but it is getting so much worse. It started with a whole kindergarten class on a field trip. They left the elementary school in town. At 9 a.m. on a Thursday, they were only going across town to a zoo and rescue. It was supposed to be a day full of petting goats and chickens, maybe feeding some animals, simple stuff. They vanished, bus and all. Searches went on for months, and it covered every news station you could think of. The town was in disarray. At the time, I was 16 and helped out at a local mom-and-pop store for some spending money after school. Every day, Mr. Nelson, he was the owner, had a little TV turned on, blaring the news. I remember everyone fearing it was some kind of terrorist attack, or some loon subdued the teacher and driver and took them. Like I said, this went on for months. So long that the school year was over before they came back. It was a normal July day, just after 4th. I was sitting behind the counter, helping Mrs. Nelson sweep up, when we saw what had to be every police car zoom by, headed towards a school. The news spread like wildfire. The bus had just cruised right up to the school and was unloading children. Their teacher didn't seem to realize that no one was even there. It was another month of questions. Every child, the teacher, bus driver, none of them could answer anything. They all said they went to the zoo, which they never actually reached, and had lunch and came back. Said it was the same day. They knew nothing. Everyone was so happy they came back that it kind of faded into a bad dream situation, and the town went back to normal. I didn't think it was normal. Like, what the fuck? The next time, it was an entire church. They were gone for 5 months. Searches happened, news stations, high-profile police, the whole deal. Guess what? When they all just showed up, everyone was so elated that the strangeness of it dissipated again. I thought I was going crazy. What do you mean they vanished and now just appeared healthy and still in church clothes? At this point, I started asking my friend what they thought. A small group of us agreed and started looking into it. Not that 17-year-olds could look into much. We went as far as talking to some of the people. They couldn't remember any of the time they were gone. The last thing was always the same. They remember being in church service and it was bright and sunny outside, and they all seemed to blink and it was dark in the middle of the night. No one seemed panicked or even concerned that it had happened. That was 2 years ago. Since then, random groups of people have vanished just to come back. Sometimes it was months. Once it was the next day, they all come back odd. Then it started happening to individuals. The sheriff left one day and didn't come back for 6 weeks. Everyone at the USPS office disappeared in the middle of the day to show up again 2 months later. My best friend went missing while playing games with me on PC, then showed up 5 days later. My parents went out for supper and came back 8 months later. It was no longer newsworthy. So many people had gone and come back that not a single soul cared anymore. I think I'm the last one. For the longest time, everyone just went about their life like normal, but something changed. Around a month ago, after keeping track, I came to the realization that I was the only person left in town who hadn't gone and come back. I hadn't talked to anyone in a long time either. The new people seemed to avoid conversation altogether. Well, I decided to start talking to everyone. I had questions. Everyone gave me odd looks as I walked through town, just trying to chat with anyone. I never got a reply. I think I messed up. Here it is, the big deal. See, I've tried to call outside people for help, but no more cell signal. Hell, I tried to leave town, but every exit is blocked and we are secluded. I don't think hiking the miles it would take to get to the next town would work. I'm not all that into the great outdoors, but I'm scared. Every night, the town seems to gather outside my house. They just stand there and stare. Every kid, every cop, even my parents, they just show up, stare, and are gone by morning. But last night they were close, pressed against the windows, and some were knocking on the house. I'm terrified about what might happen tonight. The only site that works is this one, and I need someone to find me. I live in Clearmont Creek, North Carolina, about an hour outside of Asheville. Please, someone help me. Story 4. I hit someone with my car. It was a dark and rainy night, and I couldn't see 5 feet in front of me. I was probably driving too fast on those country roads through the woods, and I was finding it very hard to focus due to lack of sleep. They came out of nowhere, smacked into my windshield, and went into the car. It was over in an instant. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. To be honest, and I know you'll think this is terrible, but I didn't even consider it. In my mind, it was his life or mine. Why should I have my life ruined because that person was standing in the middle of the road at night? So I kept driving until I finally got home. I hosed off my car until the blood was gone. Then I went inside and went to bed. I slept well. That was a year ago, and I had never driven that road again until a couple months ago. My wife and I were returning from an appointment that we had in another city, and the GPS we were using froze. Before I knew it, I was back on that road. I didn't feel guilt or shame, but resentment. I hated to be reminded of what I had done, not because I regretted it, but because it had been such an annoying inconvenience. I wasn't looking for the place where the accident happened, but I found it anyway. My wife pointed out the strange pyramid of stones by the side of the road. I slowed down to take a look. She asked me if we had ever been here before. I said that we hadn't. I don't know why, but I stopped the car. My wife didn't ask why. We both just got out of the car to get a better look. It was a crude pile of rocks that reached to about my waist in height. I couldn't help but shake the feeling that it was some sort of memorial for the person who died, like a cross that civilized people might put next to the site of a car accident. My wife asked again if she had ever been here before, and I told her no. Then we heard rustling in the woods and what looked like people coming toward us. I started to feel afraid, more afraid than I had even been in my life. I looked to my wife, hoping to comfort her despite my own terror, but she looked completely calm. I asked her if she saw what I was seeing, and she told me yes. The people kept approaching, and they started looking less like people as I could make out more of their features. They were tall but hunched and gaunt, with grayish skin and no clothing. As they reached the tree line, I could make out weapons in their hands, axes and knives made of stone. There were at least 12 of them, and I froze in fear as they shambled onto the side of the road. I looked back to my wife, and her reaction had not changed. The leader of the feral people stepped forward, grabbed my hand, and used his knife to cut a gash into my palm. I winced in pain as he rubbed his fingers around in my blood, then watched in horror as he sprinkled the blood on the pyramid of stones. I choked out a question like, "What are you doing?" But he only bared his teeth and snarled in response. My wife left my side and stood amongst a dozen forest people that faced me. She told me that she had been here in the car when I had killed one of them, but I knew that she had not been there. I had been alone. I would have remembered if she was there, and I told her so. She continued to insist, and I continued to deny. Then she told me to move the stones away from the pyramid to see what was underneath. I crouched down, rolled the rocks away, and found what lay beneath. The bones of a child. "You killed one of their young," she said, "and one of my young. I saw it with my own eyes. There is a price to pay. Blood for blood." I cried out in horror as the barbarians attacked me. They beat, slashed, and stabbed me for what felt like ages. The only reason that I survived, despite their murderous intentions, was that they seemed to take pleasure in keeping me in a prolonged state of agony. I was a bloody mess when the police found me. I had been buried in stones and was unable to move, but someone must have heard me screaming for help after the feral people left me for dead. The next 2 months were spent slowly recovering from several surgeries in the hospital. I was barely conscious during most of that time, but I swear that I saw my wife standing over me at least once. Afterwards, I was told that this was impossible. She had been missing since the day of my attack, and nobody had seen her enter or leave the hospital. I returned home without my wife. I had to give a statement to the police about what happened, and they seemed very skeptical. I couldn't blame them. They had searched my home, the woods, and everywhere in between, but couldn't find her anywhere. They asked what I thought, and I told them that I thought that she probably died at those monsters' hands. I'm not so sure if I believe that anymore, though. When the police stopped coming around, I called up an old flame from high school. We went on a date yesterday, and it went well enough. What has left me hopelessly confused and terrified is what she asked me this morning as she was leaving my place. "Why is there a big pile of rocks next to your driveway?" Story 5. My brother hasn't woken up in 3 days. Mom says he's just tired. It started 3 weeks after my dad's funeral. My mom had been doing better, cooking again, even smiling sometimes. But that Tuesday evening at dinner, she looked different, uneasy. "We need to talk," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I was only 10 years old, but I can remember every word like it was carved into my brain. Someone's been leaving things by our door, my mom told me and my brother, her eyes fixed as if she was looking at something through the kitchen window. What kind of things? I asked, noting how her hands trembled slightly as she set down her fork. She hesitated, glancing at my younger brother Alex before answering. At first, I thought it was trash. Maybe kids playing pranks. But this morning, she swallowed hard. This morning I looked closer. The silence stretched until Alex couldn't stand it. Mom, you're scaring us. There were objects arranged in what appeared to be a circle. Candles, shells that smelled like rotting seaweed, even though we're nowhere near the ocean, and herbs, dried herbs all around the thing, all connected by a thin line of salt. Her eyes never left the window as she spoke, like she was watching for something, or someone. Why would anyone? I started. It's brujeria. She cut me off, the word falling from her lips like a stone into still water. I didn't know what that meant then. I wish I still didn't. My brother and I exchanged glances. We'd never seen our mother afraid before, not during Dad's illness, not at his funeral. But now, her face had the hollow look of prey that knows it's being hunted. That was the first night I couldn't sleep. It wouldn't be the last. That night, Alex and I lay in our beds, pretending to sleep. We were waiting until Mom would fall asleep so that we could go out and see who was doing this. At 2:47 a.m., I know, because I checked my glow-in-the-dark watch. We crept toward the front door. The floorboard seemed louder in the darkness, each creak a gunshot in the silence. My heart hammered, so hard I was sure it would wake Mom. Through the glass panel of our door, the streetlight cast everything in faint yellow shadows. Something was at our doorstep. That thing was crouched. At first, my brain tried to make it normal. It seemed as if it was someone tying their shoe, but the shape was wrong. The proportions were wrong. Everything about it was wrong. Then it stood up. It unfolded like a praying mantis, joints bending in ways that made my stomach turn. It kept rising until it was impossibly tall, its head level with our tall windows. In the dim light, I couldn't make out features, just a vague impression of rags or old skin hanging from its frame. Then it turned toward us, and 2 points of red light blazed where eyes should have been. Alex's scream shattered the silence. I slapped my hand over his mouth, but it was too late. The thing outside wasn't there anymore. Not like it ran away, like it had never existed at all. Mom's footsteps thundered down the hall. What are you boys doing? We couldn't answer. We just pointed at the door with shaking fingers. She looked through the glass, then back at us. There's nothing there. But when she said it, her voice cracked, and I noticed she didn't open the door to check. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Neither did Alex. We lay in the dark, listening to every sound. The settling of the house became footsteps. The wind became whispers, and every car passing by made us hold our breath until the headlights faded. For 3 days, nothing happened. No circles, no visitors, just an oppressive quiet that felt like the world was holding its breath. Mom stopped pretending everything was fine. She moved us all into her room, as if we were all safe if we were to stay together. On the 4th night, Alex and I were playing Crash Bandicoot, trying to pretend things were normal. The familiar sounds of the game almost made me forget, until the room temperature plummeted between one breath and the next. "Turn off the AC," Alex said, his breath now visible in the sudden cold. "It's not on," I whispered. The air grew thick, viscous, like trying to breathe underwater. The game on the TV started to static, the cheerful music warping into something that hurt to hear. Then the screen went black, and in the reflection I saw them, 2 figures standing behind our beds. I tried to scream, but my lungs wouldn't work. An impossible weight pressed down on my chest. Through the paralysis, I felt something touch my face, bony fingers. The hairy, long fingers covered my mouth, as if they were trying to cover up my screams. Those red eyes hovered inches from mine, and this time I could see what was behind them. Not a face, just a hollow darkness that seemed to go on forever, like looking into an empty skull that held the night sky. The pressure released all at once. I gasped, gulping air, just as Mom burst through the door and flipped on the lights. Alex was sitting in the corner, facing the wall, completely still. "Alex!" I shouted. He turned slowly, mechanically. Blood trickled from his right nostril, and his eyes were blank, unfocused. When he spoke, his voice was flat, emotionless. "They were here. The witches. They came through the ceiling. One sat on Javier. The other one made me watch." "Watch what?" Mom asked, though by her expression, she already knew. "What's coming?" Alex said, smiling, but something else was wearing his face. "What you promised them." "That's enough," my mother said. "You both come stay in my room. Tomorrow we'll have a priest come to this house to purify whatever is in here." Father Martinez arrived the next afternoon. He was an old friend of my mother's from church. In the end, it was a small town after all, a man who blessed hundreds of homes. But when he stepped through our door, something changed in his face. He walked through the house slowly, sprinkling holy water, murmuring prayers in Latin. When he reached our bedroom, he stopped. The temperature dropped. His hands began to shake. "How long has this been happening?" he asked my mother. "A few weeks," she replied. He shook his head slowly. "No, this is older, much older." He continued his blessing, but as he raised a crucifix in our room, it fell from his hands. When he bent to pick it up, I saw his face go pale. He approached my mom's ear and whispered, "Yes, muy tard, it's too late." Father Martinez backed toward the door. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "They're already inside. They've been inside for..." He looked at my mother with something like pity. Since before, he left without finishing the blessing. Weeks passed. The visit stopped. No more circles at the door. No more red eyes in the darkness. Mom said the priest must have helped after all, but I knew she was lying. I'd started noticing things. She no longer cast a shadow. She stood outside our rooms at night. I could see her feet under the door, standing perfectly still for hours. She'd been collecting our hair while we slept, keeping the strands in a small wooden box that smelled like earth and decay. Alex hadn't been the same since that night. He slept more and more, sometimes for entire days. Mom said he was just tired. Growing boys need their rest. But his skin was getting pale, almost translucent. I could see his veins turning dark beneath it. One night, I pretended to sleep when she came in. She stood over Alex's bed for a long time, then carefully cut a few strands of his hair with tiny scissors. She wrapped the hair in tissue and put it in the box with the others. Then she turned to me. She stood there for what felt like hours. Through my barely open eyes, I could see her face changing in the moonlight. One moment my mother's familiar features, the next something ancient and terrible. Finally, she leaned down close to my ear. "Soon," she whispered. "You're almost ready." That was 3 nights ago. Alex hasn't woken up since yesterday morning. Mom says he's just tired, but I can hear him breathing in a rhythm that doesn't sound human anymore. It sounds like 2 sets of lungs working together. She's been taking my hair now too. I pretend I don't notice, but I feel the cold metal of the scissors against my skin while I sleep. Alex just sat up in his bed. His eyes are open, but they're not his anymore. They're red. For the first time in weeks, I smile. "You made it," I whisper, and he grins back with teeth that are too sharp, too many. Mom appears in the doorway. Her shadow finally returned, but it's the wrong shape entirely. "My boys," she says, and her voice holds such warmth, such love. Finally together. I realize I haven't been fighting this at all. I've been waiting for Alex to catch up. We're a family again. Story 6. There's something wrong with this free carton of eggs. There was a man waiting for me on my front porch when I got home from work. He waved at me as I walked to my house from my driveway. I had a strange feeling about him, because he was a strange-looking man. There are strangers, and then there are strange strangers, and there's a world of difference between them. But I waved back. Ours is a friendly town filled with friendly people. "Good evening," I said. "And to you," the man said. His head was shaped like an egg. and it was almost 1 1/3 times taller than the average man's. "Can I help you?" I said. "Let me not be rude," he said. "It's my pleasure to make your acquaintance. In the way of comedy and fellowship, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Roger." He held his hand out to shake. I shook his hand, and his fingers were long and cold and bumpy. A strange stranger, strange head, and strange hands. "Roger, I'm Mary Ellen," I said. "Let me also not be rude, but still be direct. I've had a long day at work, so maybe you could tell me right out what you're doing here and how I can help you." Egghead Roger nodded like I'd said something true and wise. "I can certainly appreciate that. If there's something that I can appreciate, it's directness. That's what folks are missing these days, directness. That along with a direction. I'm a rather direct man myself," he said, though he was in the middle of disproving the same. "So let me get right to it." He bent down and reached into a paper grocery bag and pulled out a carton of eggs. "I'm from the Keystone Cooperative Growers Association, and I would like to offer you these eggs. They're farm fresh and cruelty-free, and it will be my honor and the honor of my fellow growers if you would accept this gift and use these eggs to your own delight." He held out the carton, and I took the eggs. Oh, okay. This is what is this?" I said. "A carton of eggs, ma'am." His smile was too wide for his face, and it looked like the gesture might have been hurting him. "Yes, I understand that part." "Good," he said. "But why are you giving out free eggs?" "This is just a service we provide to the community. You see, the KCGA, that's our initialism. You understand, the KCGA's position is that to enjoy a good egg is to enjoy life. We want the whole world to enjoy their lives, which to some degree means we want them to enjoy our eggs, too." "Oh, do you know that a God lives inside of our eggs?" "How's that now?" "The time will come when the God-filled eggs will feed the sick and the poor until the sick and the poor are no more. That time will be the time of the egg. Everything unborn will be born, and everything dead will be born again. All will fall under the judgment of the many heads." I stared at him. I said, "Is this a religious thing? I don't really go to church." "There will be no more faith when the world's flags are blooded. The light of sanctification is kept only inside the egg." I've only ever met one Scientologist. "Are you a science?" Well, as I said, it would make all of us at the KCGA just happy as the day is long if you'd only take those eggs and enjoy them for yourself. And with that, I will leave you and wish you a wonderful rest of your evening. Enjoy your eggs and enjoy your life, ma'am. And if you can enjoy both at once." He turned and sprinted toward the woods. I looked down at my new eggs, thinking of Ron Hubbard. The KCGA man was half a bubble-off plum, and I was undecided as far as eating lunatic produce. I thought I'd mull it over before frying up the man's eggs. But maybe I was being mistrustful. I reminded myself to keep in the habit of trusting people until they give me a reason not to. Ours is a friendly town filled with friendly people. I woke up hungry Saturday morning, still in my pajamas. I maundered downstairs with a residue of sleep in my eyes. I looked in my refrigerator. There was nothing in there but those KCGA eggs. I picked the egg carton up out of the refrigerator. I put the eggs on the counter next to where the range was built into it. I took the salted butter from the fridge and lobbed a dollop off into the skillet. I clicked the gas on the stovetop. The skillet got crackling. I reached for one of the eggs. I picked up the first egg, nice and cold from the fridge. I could feel the weight of albumin and yolk inside the shell. But when I broke the shell on the edge of the skillet, then cracked it all the way open, there was nothing inside. I had a feeling like one of those rubes a magician calls on stage just to make a fool of. I knew I'd felt something inside that egg. I took the next one. Its heft weighed a shellful of egg. I again split the shell on the skillet. Naught but nothing the same as before. There I was, starting to get miffed. I went through 11 eggs that way. Every one of them felt like it had a chicken egg inside of it. Hell, I know what a full egg feels like. I cracked almost all of them open, emptied down at each one. One egg was left. In for a penny, in for a pound. I picked up what I expected to be the last empty egg. Except when I cracked this one, something came out. It wasn't a yolk. A small egg-shaped human had plopped into the skillet out the shell. It had 2 sets of 3 little legs, one set coming out each side of the head. I screeched, and when the spidery little head hit the skillet and started sizzling, it was screeching too. I took the spatula and flipped the thing onto the counter. It moved its spindly little legs like it was hurt. It cried like how a baby cries. A tiny little egg-sized critter, half fried on my kitchen counter. I turned off the burner, but I did not know what to do next. The 6-legged head made a wheezing sound. Then there was a noise like air being let out of a bicycle tire. And then it was dead. I did not shower or brush my teeth or put real clothes on. I poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey, grabbed a pack of cigarettes I'd swore off of 2 months ago, and parked my ass on my front porch steps. I sat there until I finished my whiskey and smoked a half-dozen parliaments. I tucked my old-fashioned glass behind my derriere's stern post when the early risers passed by on their morning stroll. To neighbors who stopped and said they thought I'd quit smoking, I made a gesture of, hey, what can you do? Ours is a friendly town full of friendly people. I had some liquid courage to fortify me, so I re-entered my house and then my kitchen. The 6-legged head was gone, but there was another egg in its place. This one was about the size of a grapefruit. I figured on driving down the state road to my friend Dustin's. His daddy was a poultry man. So Dustin knew lots about chickens and lots about eggs and loved talking about both. So much, so that I'd previously found him duller than watching paint dry. But it's not like I ever told him. I put the egg in a little grocery bag and hung it on the wall hooks while I went to get ready to see Dustin. By the time I got cleaned up and dressed, there was someone knocking on my door. I went downstairs and opened it to find my old high school boyfriend, Danny. Danny smiled. I smiled back. Hi, Mary Ellen. Danny, how's Trix? Well, you know, I'm in town to visit my brother and my new niece. He had a girl this time. How is good old Bud? I said. We used to call Danny's baby brother Ali Bud Earl, because he was a known fuss budget who'd rather lose a limb than show up at church or school any less than 15 minutes early. His mother used to say that Earl would make sure to be dead and resurrected twice before anyone else even knew the rapture had started. He's more boring than watching grass grow. Say, I was wondering if you... I'll get my purse. This was a semi-regular thing. When Danny came back to town, we went out carousing as a matter of course. After trolling roadhouses, we returned to my place to, as I've heard it put, Netflix and chill. I was out the door not a minute later. The grapefruit-sized egg still hung on my wall hook, but for the moment unseen to the call of my lust. We got dropped off back home after drinking by my friend Jackie. 3 sheets to the wind, 2 blitz to steer the ship, but too old to be stupid enough to drunk drive either. Some call that wisdom. Me and Danny stood under the fading yellow porch light as it projected the shadows of Moth's aerial maneuvers. Danny kept grabbing at me, not in a bad way. I needed to concentrate because the lock, as if by magic, kept moving away from my key. Mary Ellen, I turned around and held my finger to my lips, trying not to laugh. S-A-H-H. I got neighbors. They're late when it sleeps. I mean, Danny... Hey, Danny, what do I mean? You mean they're sleeping when you... Danny stumbled back into my wind chime and jangled it loud. Shit! I started laughing hysterically. I finally managed to tell Danny that I thought my neighbors probably moved their bowels during daylight hours, too. He didn't get it. To be fair, I'm not sure it was a joke. I got the key in the lock and opened the door. Danny grabbed my wrist and stopped me as I was about to walk in. Hold on, little lady. It's late at night, and the light's not bright. Let me check your homestead, he said and waggled his eyebrows. I laughed and held one arm toward my door, like a girl presenting game show prizes. My hero, you're sure as shit chivalrous. Danny walked inside. He suddenly stopped after just a few steps. I heard a gurgling sound, then a croaking sound, like when you're in severe pain, but don't have the wind to cry out. Danny just stood there. Danny. I said, what are you doing? I reached inside and to the left of him and switched on the vestibule light. I saw why Danny was stock still and what was gurgling. 2.5 foot long barbs punctured his neck and the side of his head and his temple, respectively. There came a thick, quick, slushing sound as the barb slickly slid out his throat and skull. Danny convulsed as he fell to floor. I stared but couldn't move. A half-dozen legs, like 7-foot-long bendable stilts, carried forward a massive head the size of a yoga ball. My adrenal glands secreted enough to boot me off my drunk. I put together the sequence in my head. The first egg gave birth to the first tiny head with legs. The first tiny head with legs gave birth to the bigger egg. The bigger egg gave birth to this. The barb snapped back into the egg-shaped head's mouth. The thing's 6 legs locomoted like an 8-foot-tall spider crab's. Its height was all long limbs. I screamed. I turned to run. It caught me on the snare of one of its crustacean spindles. The appendage was no thicker than a garden hose, but the kinetic strength of the other 5 legs produced an unimpedable force. The 6-legged head flung me like a rag doll across my living room. I hit head first into a wall. Everything went black. I woke up in the corner of my living room. The 6-legged head was gigantic, much bigger than before. A proboscis like a livid blood-red bamboo shoot extended from the middle of its forehead down toward the ground, where it had punctured Danny's body through the top of the skull. I heard slurping and sucking noises over another noise like a wet/dry shop vacuum. As it sucked out Danny's brains and guts, the 6-legged head metamorphosed. Bulbs of flesh molded new shapes on its face. Bones broke and reset to alter curvatures. It was a nightmare claymation, a freakish raw bottom manufacture. I grasped its metamorphic purpose. It was turning its face into Danny's. By the time it slurped up the dregs of Danny's insides, the face had completely changed into his. Its proboscis shucked itself free of the swollen puncture wound in Danny's skull. My date's dead body was shrunken, drained of its every wet drop. The 6-legged head noticed me, as if I'd only just appeared. It approached my corner in a mutant hexapod gait. Once beside me, it looked down. I looked up and saw the top of the head almost touch ceiling tiles. I from KCGA. The 6-legged head spoke in Danny's voice. I started crying. Neighborly is giving eggs, it said. You happiness with eggs. You loving eggs. I covered my mouth to blunt what would soon be hiccuping sobs. I tried not to make noise. It was right there. God, that thing was right there. And Danny's voice. My voice came from my body but still startled me. I was flooded with existential anxiety. Had the 6-legged head penetrated my flesh? 2. Had it infected my brain? Was I only a host dreaming my parasite's dreams? It spoke louder and chittered. Under Danny's voice was a noisy, burbling sludge like food through a gassy gut. You are happiness inside eggs. Our neighboring? Happy eggs. Yes, I am very happy with the eggs. I managed while bearing down on my weeping. The 6-legged head seemed to think this over for a minute. It spoke. Eggs is community. Eggs is neighbors and neighborly. Eggs is friendly and are gooding. You would buy more eggs. Yes, I'll buy more eggs, I swear. I looked around for my purse. Did I have cash? Is that what it wanted? I could go to the... Oh, I thought of something. I have to go to the bank to get money to pay you. I said. The 6-legged head began processing this. As it worked out my proposal, it spoke its thoughts aloud. Bank are money. Money are giving KCGA. KCGA, God of Peoples. Eggs is KCGA. Money is going for eggs. XXX. Exchange. I said. The 6-legged head blew dumb, forced laughter out its mouth. Like a grade schooler guffawing an incomprehensible joke about political economy. Its laughter stopped with sudden violence. Eggs are money exchange. Eggs is money. Our money is KCGA. Money is God of Peoples. It leaned over me, scrutinizing my face with stupid but penetrating gaze. Bank or where? I pointed toward the door. In town. Money or bank? I nodded. Yes, the money is in the bank. It bent one of its spidery legs and scratched the necklace underside of its head body. I don't know if it was actually thinking or aping a gesture it had seen a thinking creature make. You go bank, it said. Yes, I go bank. It skittered back a few steps and opened a clear path toward the front door. It turned to look at that point of egress. then turned to look back at me. Eggs is money in our KCGA, God of all peoples. You're gonna bank. I didn't know what it wanted me to do. I didn't move. Go! The head said, much louder with force. I didn't need any more prompting than that. I got to my feet, careful to make no sudden movements. I tiptoed past the six-legged head with as wide a berth as I could give. As soon as I was at my door, I ran. When I came back with the police, there was no evidence of any of the things I claimed had happened. There was no blood on my living room carpet, no six-legged head, no egg carton in the trash from the KCGA, no Danny's body. Nothing, all of it, gone. I was warned that I needed to cut back on the sauce. EMS came and checked me out, asked me how many quarters make up a dollar, and who the president was. They said that maybe I was a little too drunk, but that I was still lucid. I saw one of the EMTs nod his head at me sideways while he talked to one of the cops. The cop came over and asked me a bunch of questions. They were all roundabout, secondary queries. What he was really asking was, are you now, or have you ever been, a drunken lunatic spinster? The cop decided the answer was probably yes. I was cited for misdemeanor crime of false alarm or report. I sought psychological counseling. You tend not to believe your own eyes when something happens like what I precedingly described. I thought it couldn't hurt. After a week or so, I got a call from Earl asking if I'd seen Danny. I told him we'd gone out, and I told him that I told the cops what we'd been up to that night, too, and I left it at that. When Earl sees me in the grocery store now, he gets a look on his face like he's smelling shit. Then he turns and walks the other way. I wouldn't be surprised if he wanted to kill me. A month later, there was a carton of eggs waiting on my doorstep when I got home from work. There was a note tied to the carton, knotted to it with twine. Enjoy the latest batch. Please remit payment at your convenience. Your friends at the KCGA. Ours is a friendly town with friendly people. Story 7. Messages kept appearing on my daughter's window. She think they are from her imaginary friend. Daddy, come look. Millie yelled from her balcony above me. What is it, sweetheart? I asked, wiping the sweaty forehead. Come quick. It was only 9 in the morning, yet I have worked since 7 on painting the fence. I needed a break anyway. I went up to her room, and I saw what she was pointing at. The window was covered in foggy condensation, and as if somebody wrote it with their finger, there was a single word on it. Help. My friend wrote it. Which friend? Sam. He comes to my room sometimes at night. I raised an eyebrow. I know kids can make up imaginary friends sometimes. Hell, even I did, as Mom told me once. The thing is, when it happens with your kid, it's a whole different story. I chose my next words very carefully. Why did Sam write this, Millie? I don't know. He seems sad. How come? He is always frowning. He doesn't speak. I figured the divorce would be hard on Millie. I was lucky enough to get custody and take her away from her narcissistic mother, who mentally abused her in a way she was too young to understand. The final straw was when Millie caught her cheating. She tried gaslighting my own daughter against me, to both distance her from myself and to try and get Millie on her side before inevitable divorce. I was so proud of Millie. She told me that Mom had a friend visiting several times a week while I was away at work, and that something seemed wrong to her. God bless her. For a 9-year-old, she was really smart. She understood to a certain level why we had to get divorced, but that did not change the fact that she still missed her mommy. Afterwards, I did the only logical thing. Even though I knew it would not be easy for Millie, we moved 3 states away to a small town in the Midwest. I hoped a fresh start would be good for both of us, and I did not think twice when I saw the listing for a 2-story house being sold at a relatively cheap price. Located on the edge of the city, with beautiful nature around it, it was perfect. My boss was very understanding when I asked to work remotely, so I figured, even if something doesn't fit us here, we could simply move again. I knew this was a lot to process for her. A lot of changes happened, and I tried giving her as much attention as possible but between both company and housework, it was not easy. So perhaps all of this was just her way to cope. Maybe she made up a friend to express her conflicting feelings to someone. Finding friends in a new area was not easy. Maybe she was coping with big life changes, or maybe this was just a ploy to get more attention from a daddy. I looked over the window again. The fact that message literally said, "Help," only supported my theory. All right, sweetie, you know what? How about I finish my work later, and we can go get ice cream now? Yay! She burst with joy for a moment, face turning to frown a moment after. I wish Sam could go with us. We can buy you some toys, and you can show them to Sam later. I played along only for a bit. I knew I should acknowledge her feelings, but not go overboard with it. Pretty soon Sam might become real if I did that. We spent a day at the mall. I got her some ice cream as promised, some dolls and clothing for them, and she even begged me for an expensive dollhouse. I gave in. Today was her day. Anything that could make her mind off. It worked. She did not mention Sam for the rest of the day, nor did I. I made her some macaroni and cheese in the evening, and we watched Finding Nemo. I told her it was my favorite cartoon, and she loved it. I took her to my room, kissed her goodbye, and went myself to bed. Next morning, I got back to painting the fence. Around the same time as yesterday, Millie called me. I was not about to dismiss her feelings yet. So I played along again. I got to her room, and sure enough, there were the words on the window again, under the shed, unlike the one from yesterday. This message gave me chills. I could associate the word help with Millie's feelings, but this seemed too random for her. Why do you think Sam wrote that, sweetie? I asked carefully. He is a sad daddy. He needs you to help him. I turned to her, trying to not give away the glimpse of panic in my eyes. What does Sam look like? Oh, I can't see him in the dark exactly. He just sits in the corner of the room, swaying. Swaying? How do you know he is named Sam? Yes, with hands around his legs. That is all that he speaks all the time. Sam, Sam, Sam. A puzzle started coming together in my head. I didn't believe in ghosts too much, but small towns, a cheap house that sold pretty much instantly. Is Sam real? Is this house actually haunted? I tried laughing casually and telling Millie I would help Sam after we got some breakfast. I could not eat though. I watched Millie. She was not scared. Unlike me, if Sam was indeed real, and Millie was not afraid of him, perhaps he is just a benign ghost? Do those exist? I went over to my first door neighbor's house after, to an older gentleman named Mark, who came over to introduce himself the first day I came here. I thought he would give me some answers. We sat. He poured us some fine whiskey. I tried refusing as it was still morning. He persuaded me, saying he doesn't have that many people left to share drinks with. I accepted. Mark, I have to ask you a weird question. Why was the house I bought so damn cheap? I was wondering when you were going to ask me that, he said, putting his glass away, tone turning serious. Well, before you came over, a few months ago there was a murder in the house. Blood drained from my face, and he must have noticed it. Yes, I know. Not a thing you want to hear. What happened? A father suffering from schizophrenia, which we did not know until then. He killed his wife, presumably his son and himself. Mother's body was found in the house, but his and son's bodies were never found. Mark lost himself in thoughts for a moment and gulped. It was declared as murder-suicide. Blood trails led behind the house toward the woods, disappearing there. I was the one called the police, actually. I heard him yelling over and over, "Kill them all! I must kill them all." One of the people that saw him that day said that he snapped, thinking his family had been replaced by imposters. I see. I downed my drink, handing over glass to Mark for a refill. Don't think about it too much, kid. Paranoia and schizophrenia are a dangerous combination, but it's all in the past now. Focus on the future. It's a wonderful house, and those things happen unfortunately. Yes, they do, I said absently. I could not tell him that I thought the house was haunted. I would look crazy. I downed a second drink, thanked him, and went back to the house. I knew what I had to do now. I waited for Millie to fall asleep. As soon as I put her to bed, I took the shovel and went straight for the shed. It was behind the house, at the far edge of the backyard, tall trees towering over it looking much bigger and dense at night. The same forest where Father took the kid. Presumably, I only checked it out the first day I came here. I did not have time nor strength to deal with it. A large metal door creaked, and I was hit with the stale smell of mold and rust. Boxes and tools were scattered all over the place, and the light of the flashlight hit something that drew my attention. The shed did not have a floor. It was basically put right on the ground, plain dirt below my feet. In the corner, I could see the edge of something metal. I moved the boxes to reach it, coughing from the dust, and shined a light on it. It seemed like the hatch door under the shed. The police must have missed it a few months back. I debated if I should open it. I thought about it for a moment. I remembered a documentary I caught on TV once. It was either sudden, violent death or unfinished business that prevented dead people from ascending, keeping their ghosts on Earth. The only logical explanation was that little Sam's ghost is still at unrest because he was violently murdered by his father. By finding his body, I could help him. A proper burial would release him, I guess, and he will not visit Millie at night anymore. I grabbed the hatch and I pulled. A cold gust of air blew right through me, sending shivers down my spine, almost knocking me down. I thought I even heard a rough voice for a moment. I didn't make out the words, however. I pointed the flashlight down below, and I could immediately realize it was one of those end-of-the-world bunkers. It made sense. Of course, a paranoid schizophrenic would have atomic shelter in his backyard. I could see 2 bunk beds, shelves filled with food, and right there in the middle, remains of 2 bodies and a shotgun between them. I didn't need to see anything else. I ran back to the house and called the police immediately. 2 patrol cars appeared soon, and I led them to the shelter. One of the officers, a chubby man named Robert, knew the family. Tears appeared at the corner of his eyes when he saw decaying bodies, and by the clothing only he said he could confirm it was them. He did not need to wait for forensics. I left the officers to finish the work, feeling relief and fear at the same time. I did help Sam. That, however, meant Sam was real. At least at one point. Mark was on the street in front of the house, with a couple of neighbors that came to check why there were patrol lights in the middle of night. I pulled him to the side and explained. This time I did not care about sounding crazy, so I told him everything. Night has been too crazy already. But all of that meant little Sam was finally put to rest. Mark squinted his eyes at me. What do you mean, Sam? It was what the ghost kept repeating, Millie said. We figured it was his name. Sam is the older brother. He is still alive, working in New York City. He was there when all of this happened. You actually bought a house from him through his agent, I think. I tried making sense of it, but I gave up. I was already mentally exhausted. I realized I haven't checked on Millie since I put her to sleep. Lights and noise might have woken her up. I waved goodnight to Mark. I got to Millie's room, and as suspected, she was already awake. Hi, baby. Sorry about. Daddy, Sam was speaking. She interrupted me. He came to say goodbye. Did he? I am glad he did. I still tried acting as if all of this was normal, which was not by far. Him coming to say goodbye raised hair on my skin. He left you a message. Millie said cheerfully, pointing at the window. I moved the curtains, and surely enough, there was a message, not the one I wanted or expected to see. Kill them all. I can finally kill them all. Story 8. I had sleep paralysis because of my cats. I had woken up at 4:40 in the morning. That night, I stayed sleeping in my mom's room because I felt more comfortable. I woke up because my kittens were playing with a lot of energy in the bed and kept scratching or biting my foot. I didn't want to scold them since I didn't see the point in that. I just laid down on my back with a tired face since I was very sleepy and my cats wouldn't let me sleep. After a few minutes without being able to sleep, I was a little stressed, but I decided to talk a little with my mom, who was already getting ready to go to work. When my mother had already left, it was 5 in the morning. It was almost dawn. I checked the time on the phone and then decided to no longer care about the cats. And with a sigh, I dropped my hand with the phone on the bed and closed my eyes. I felt as if my body was separated from my head, although at that moment, because of the dream I had, I didn't give it any importance. I realized I could open my eyes even though my body was asleep. At that moment, I had a hallucination where I grabbed my phone and Instagram opened by itself. A Roblox video appeared to me where a man who looked like a 50-year-old Spanish man was being a pedophile with a little girl, saying completely disgusting things to her. After that, I dropped my phone again and said, Roblox is seriously not a safe game. And out of nowhere I started to feel weird. A silence came suddenly and everything became completely silent. I began to hear Sasha meowing desperately as if something was attacking her. I wanted to turn my head to see what was happening, but I couldn't. When I tried to move my head, it felt heavy, as if it were stuck to the mattress. Then a high-pitched beeping sound began to be heard, the same one you hear when you cover your ears. I started to get a little scared, but then it went away and I was just confused as to what was happening as I couldn't move. The beeping became louder and louder, and everything in my vision began to look grayer. I realized in that moment that, for the first time, I was aware of what was happening to me. When I tried to move my head again, a very loud and high-pitched sound stunned me and blurred my vision. It was as if it were warning me that if I moved it again, something very bad would happen to me. I wanted to test if I could scream. I could open my mouth and breathe out. So that meant I could scream. But I decided not to do it because I was already regaining my mobility. I was finally able to move, and when I looked to my left, I saw that Sasha was meowing like that because one of the kittens had fallen off the bed and she was trying to get him up, but she didn't know how. Then I was afraid to go back to sleep since I was sleepy and my body was upset. But then I was able to get the courage to go back to sleep. And I woke up at 9 in the morning and had my normal day. Story 9. I went to a remote Airbnb to get over my ex, and he texted me from inside. I thought leaving the city, leaving him, leaving everything familiar would give me some relief. The Airbnb was tucked into the woods, far from the nearest town. No Wi-Fi, patchy self-service, just me, a cabin, and the damp smell of pine and rain. Perfect. I needed to vanish for a few days, to stop replaying our fights. The things I shouldn't have said, the things I should have left unsaid. Driving there, the rain-slicked roads made the world blur. Headlights reflected off the wet asphalt like tiny mirrors, fragments of my own reflection bouncing back at me. I hummed to keep myself awake, but my thoughts kept straying to him. To the last text I never replied to his laugh that felt like home and betrayal at once. When I arrived, the cabin looked exactly like the photos. Cozy, wooden, modest, with a small porch overlooking the river. Mist rolled off the water like a slow, persistent exhale. I pulled my bag from the trunk and hesitated on the steps. Silence stretched in every direction. I could feel it pressing against my ears. Waiting. Inside it was warm, smelled faintly of wood polish, and smelled faintly like someone had lived here recently. I shrugged it off and unpacked. Lights, bedspread, kitchenware, all in order. I made myself a cup of coffee and sank into the corner of the couch, wrapped in a blanket. I wasn't even halfway through the first sip when my phone buzzed. Unknown, finally. My stomach dropped. I didn't recognize the number. I dropped the phone, expecting it to be a mistake. Unknown, you're here. I can see you. I froze, checked every window. Nothing. The rain blurred the forest beyond. My heart began hammering. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone had hacked the Airbnb. Maybe I was losing it. Hours passed. I unpacked, rearranged, tried to paint. Every time I moved, the phone buzzed again. Each message seemed impossibly precise. Unknown, the mug, you like it for the way it curves. You always use it first thing in the morning. I hadn't told anyone about the mug. I hadn't even packed it until a week ago. My hands shook as I set it down. Unknown, the blanket, folded wrong. I fixed it. I ran to check. The corner was tucked neatly, the folds perfect. I didn't do that. The storm outside rattled the cabin walls. I paced. Every creak sounded like footsteps. Every rustle of leaves against the windows became a whisper. I tried calling my best friend, but no signal. Tried 911. Nothing. At some point, I realized I hadn't taken off my shoes. I set them down. When I returned 5 minutes later, they were angled differently, toes pointing toward the center of the room. I tried reasoning. Maybe it was just a glitch. Maybe someone had remote access to the cabin's smart lock, its lights, its tiny Wi-Fi connected thermostat. Maybe I had imagined the whole weekend to begin with. Then my phone buzzed again. Unknown, why are you pretending this isn't your idea? I stopped breathing. The words hung in the air, heavy, impossible. My own thoughts twisted into unfamiliar shapes. Did I subconsciously invite him here? Did I want this? I fled to the bedroom, pulled the blanket over my head, shaking. Hours passed in silence, punctuated only by the occasional buzz of my phone. Each message knew more than I thought I had told anyone. Around 3 a.m., the final storm subsided. Mist hung low over the river. I peeked out the window. The forest was empty, serene. I told myself I was safe. Then I noticed it. Shadows moving just beyond the trees. Not humans, exactly. Too tall, too still. Every time I blinked, they seemed closer. Gone when I looked again. My phone buzzed one last time. Unknown, welcome home. I haven't returned since. I deleted the Airbnb account, blocked the number, tried to forget. But sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet and I'm alone, my phone buzzes. Just once. Unknown, miss me? And I swear, even with the light on, I feel the faintest shift in the room, like the air itself is watching. Sometimes I think it was never him at all. Maybe it was just me. Story 10. Does anyone know what creature visiting me? To me, it is darkness. I have been getting a weird visitor almost every night lately. It terrifies me, and I need someone to help me out and tell me how to get rid of it. Please, has anyone had an experience like mine? I'm posting my exact experience from last night. Please read, and let me know if anyone has had a similar issue or knows what is happening to me. What happened last night? It stands at the end of my bed. Quietly, sweat rolls down my neck as I lie on my side. My eyes are pried open in stinging pain. I woke up just a minute ago to that black thing again. If I ignore it, nothing happens. If I fall asleep again, it'll be gone by morning. But as I stare at the wall, I find it hard to close my eyes again. When will it pounce? Why is it here? Terror floods my body as I start to shake. It rises in my chest as I try to think of anything other than the terrifying dream I just had and what I woke up to again. I think of my cat lying beside me on the bed, the comfort that he provides. I think of the work I need to get done tomorrow, of the sunrise and the stars. Hours seem to pass, and my eyes become droopy. Its presence is one I know well, but I am still not used to it. I've always ignored it, and I feel safe that way. The tick of the grandfather clock lulls me, and my eyes droop before I snap them open again. It appears I cannot win. A scuffle has the hair on the back of my neck, standing up. I turn my head, looking over my shoulder. It's moved spots. Now it sits at the edge of the bed opposite me. It appears darker than the blackness around me. Its eyes, deep tunnels of pink flesh, bore into me from the other side of my bed. Panic claws at my chest as dizziness starts to overcome me. It's too much. Shivers rack my body as the thing's head tilts to the side, and it realizes I cannot move. My fear paralyzes me. Something about the thing is familiar to me, but it only adds to the flame of terror. My vision becomes blurry as I feel my heart beating faster and faster. The last thing I see before I pass out is a small smile appear on its face. I've never noticed a mouth on it before. A cold brush of wind against my cheek causes my eyes to flutter open again and my heart to stop. It is on my side of the bed, staring down at me. I quickly sit up and push myself to the other side of the bed, its eyes seeming to follow me somehow. Its mouth spreads into a large, toothy grin. I then notice its hands, thick and venous, as it slowly leans down and onto my bed. My heart nearly pounds out of my chest as I fight the nausea that consumes me. Stop. I yell, Not sure if it's directed at myself or the thing. It just tilts its head again, smile growing wider. I breathe in and out. I'm doing this. Who are you? I ask. Its smile falls as it slowly starts to talk. The voice is high-pitched, almost like nails on a chalkboard, as it mutters out one letter at a time. Y-O-U. What does that mean? I can't comprehend it as my mind continues to spin and the air feels thin. I risk closing my eyes to steady myself, and when I open them, it's gone. I spin around, searching the room for it, but nothing is found other than my cat jumping on the bed to find out why I'm making so much noise. I pull him close and cuddle us both under the covers, although now that it's touched my bed, I feel much less safe.